Hey everybody, welcome back to Not Another Tooling podcast with myself, Austin Pearson, and my co-host, Mr. Mr. Matt
Mr. Mount.
Malcolm. That was a good start on it. How are you today, Matt?
I'm good, man. I'm good. It's nice as we move into the summer months, and it always makes a big difference. What I've realised is over the last few years, you got to like capitalise on these like summer months. So that as you go through to the winter months, you've got some energy and other stuff, so you can sort of float better. Or alternatively, just leave the UK. So there's that.
That's the dream, isn't it? Live in the UK during the summer, when it's warm, and then live abroad somewhere else, but not overly practical, especially when you've got kids and things like that. Although, yeah, if you've read one of my favorite books, The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss, there are lots of great stories of people doing things like that.
I know. So
their kids.
Vagabonding. So from that book, I got the Vagabonding books, and then I also got the Vagabonding with Kids. And like full on ready, was like, yeah, okay, this was a year ago, 2 years ago. I was like, yeah, this is really good. And then you know how it goes, you get excited and it doesn't really. But yeah, absolutely achievable. Depends what you do, I guess, as well. But I think nice.
Good. So today we are talking about when is a good time to bring in outside help in the tooling space, and why it might be a good idea to do so. And this is obviously there are many companies that make lots and lots of money from doing these things at a big level, right? You know, it's the first thing you do if you're a large company and you're like, okay, we need to change direction or do this. You bring in a big consultancy and pay them lots of money, and their answer says you should hire us. And lots of people.
Here's our roadmap.
Millions. Yeah, exactly. But in the tooling space, it's a little bit different. And in fact, it's very rare that people bring in outside help in the tooling space, in what I've seen. But it's absolutely super beneficial. And the reason that I think it's beneficial is because most companies, most organizations have always operated a certain way, and therefore they know how their business works. They know how the tools have worked in their business, but they very, very rarely see how other companies are operating and how they're using tools and running their kind of tooling operations department. And they could be miles away, or they could be absolute geniuses, who knows? But there's often a lot of opportunity for improvement by bringing in somebody else who gets to see what other companies are doing in depth on a regular basis, I think. What do you think, Matt?
All the above. I was just sort of drift a little bit there, thinking of scenarios where I've seen it. I think there's a couple of, maybe there's more than two, but there's two buckets I think it falls into where I think it's a sensible thing. Is if as a business you're not 100% sure what you should be doing or want to do or could be doing, so almost like a strategic part, but that's a very temporary piece. That is let's bang out a month, 2 months, 3 months, whatever the logical period is, depending on the size and the scope of activity, to get a position of clarity. So I think that's really worthwhile doing that, because it's that different lens that you talked about, the external perspective, to sort of create a bit of a path. And the other side is more, I guess, operational, from a getting it done. And getting it done could be bits of BAU, but generally deter away from that, I guess, long term. Or it could be you had the idea thing over here, now you want to go and get the thing done over here. But getting the thing done over here always has to have an end. You know, the notion of having temporary help that is around for a year or 2 years, or I've seen more, is, you know, the drive of having someone there in that capacity doing that is not the original intention. But with those two pieces, I feel like it should always be separate parties. We said at the beginning about the notion of a player, big or small, coming in with an activity to go, this is what you should do, and then actually they're also lined up to do all the things. The cleanest way I've seen it work, and I've been in all of those pieces, client side as well, is the party who's given the view, the roadmap, the recommendations, is different to the one doing the work. Then you're getting the best of both worlds there. The intention there is to scope out the best thing to go after. And these guys here have no vested interest in creating anything new. They just need to get on with the work that's been presented with them. That's how I'd kind of look at it. But I'm sure there's more than 2 buckets, but those are the easiest ones for me to think about previous scenarios.
So why would you have them be separate companies?
It's the intentions. I mean, I don't say everybody's bad, but if you have an organisation that's there to put a scope of work together, to draft the vision in the future, isn't it more clear or transparent if that vision in the future doesn't involve them? It purely is the best recommendation. It is the path that should be taken. There's no ambiguity then. If they're recommending this direction or this product or that or this, and there's no vested interest for them, it's clean, it's more legible. And again, not to say lots of consultancies are misleading, but that removes any of that ambiguity. And on the delivery side, just some group that's competent for it, really, just that they're not involved in also the scoping piece. Otherwise, it just becomes, and we've definitely both seen this, a vicious circle of done a bit, do a bit more, done a bit, do a bit more, done a bit, do a bit more, and it never really ends. And then that's where organisations get locked in inadvertently long term with MSPs, because it just becomes a crutch they can't really get rid of.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's another driver for getting people in that we often see, although people should bring in outside help, but they don't, is cost reduction, right? There is, if you're internally trying to drive cost reduction, there's limited results, I think typically, because you're thinking about the way you've always done things, and then you're trying to go back to your suppliers and say, okay, we can't afford the uplift this year, and we need a 10% haircut and yada yada. Can we get away without this tool and all that sort of thing? Whereas somebody else from the outside who really knows their stuff, if they come in, they might come in and say, hang on a minute, your competitors are paying half the price of that license. Let's get away with that. And hang on, and that tool, crikey, goodness me, there's such a much better version of that over there. Over here, you could move here for half the price. But they're seeing it elsewhere, or seeing that maybe you've got a bloated team that and you could run products for less, or whatever it is. But there's definitely massive advantage to doing that. But I do think that the very nature of saying, oh, we need to do cost savings, right, well, let's spend some money on bringing somebody else in, I think that's what puts people off.
Yeah,
but I think there's also some pretty cool consultancies out there these days that will do consulting based on a sort of risk reward strategy. So if they save you X amount of money, then they get paid a percentage, and if they don't, then neither of you lose too much. Probably an initial fee or something like that, but it's not too much. So I don't think the risk is that great, but the rewards could be absolutely enormous.
No, I agree. And that one comment you said there about bloating, that's an observation you see with longer term service provider relationships, is extra people there. And it could be not redundant roles, but roles which as an outsider you could come in and question fairly quickly to say, why is there 6 people supporting this thing, and over here it takes 2? Maybe there's a backstory, maybe you don't know. But then also, if you've got the level of detail, is you can see the level of productivity of that 6-man strong team versus what you'd expect to see for a 2-person output. So I think the bloating is definitely something I can see happen, have seen happen with longer term. Doesn't happen straight away because it's normally a really lean scope to get the work. It's quite narrow most of the time. But then you could probably just look at the overall footprint of growth and then just be another one. Those are the ones to avoid, but you don't know until you're too deep into it a lot of the time.
Yeah, I agree. And I think there's probably a couple of approaches here. I think there is if you're out and thinking this is a good idea, there's some things you could do that don't cost you anything at all. Like you could go to some of your existing vendors' user groups, for example, and speak to other customers there, which user groups used to be a huge thing. And in person, and then you talk in the pub afterwards, and all that sort of thing. It was great, and that was the value, was talking afterwards to all the other users, and
the social side.
That sort of thing rarely happens these days. It does happen every now and again, but not as much as it should do. But it's a great way to find out what other people are doing, and make some contacts. It's the same, dare I say this, with your vendors. But most of your vendors will be working with lots of other companies. And so they may well have a way to benchmark how you're doing against other companies. And I'm not talking here just about cost savings, but in terms of maturity and things like that. Bearing in mind they will have their view on the situation, right? I'm talking about, but it's still not a bad thing to do necessarily. And then the third one, obviously, is the traditional route of finding a company or an organization or consultancy that specializes in this type of thing. And I've seen there's kind of two types of organization, right? There'll be your traditional large organization who are doing it, but as you mentioned earlier, thinking, okay, we're going to come in, we're going to do that, and then we'll win a load of business on the back to implement all of these things, versus the smaller kind of more niche consultancy where you get some real experts that have worked in the field for years and years, who now work for themselves with maybe 2 or 3 others, and they really know the space and are completely impartial, and can really bring that view. And that, I think, is that, it's that ultimate kind of space, really. Ideally, if I was getting somebody into my organization, I'd want some people who've had a lot of experience coming in and have delivered some results as well.
You need the battle wounds, don't you? That's what you need. You need you don't need the accreditations, you need the battle wounds. So I absolutely agree with the external, impartial, boutique kind of approach, as and where you can find them. They're really hard to find depending on what the subject is. But on the flip side of that, I'm definitely not against the notion of the vendors coming in. If it's a product based thing, especially if the result doesn't result in extra licenses, which is not an uncommon scenario. Because like you say, the vendor's been across the piece, they'll know how to use their product and solutions the best. And ultimately, even if it isn't a product sell at the end, it is a bigger picture product sell, because they want to keep you as a customer long term. So I think it's definitely worth having those conversations with vendors if it's a particular product you're looking at, because it might not be big, it might be big picture, right? It might be cross product.
Yeah.
But if it's a particular product you really want to get mature on or do something, that first conversation can absolutely be with the vendor. It's information, really. You can use this to benchmark against other parties, be that boutique kind of approach or another third party, big MSP. But it's definitely worthwhile doing, because they, as a business, have a vested interest in you progressing. So it's worthwhile activity, because they'll be in the best position to also help you progress a lot of the time as well. So I think a vendor position is a really strong one. And it depends on the vendor and the product stack and all those kind of factors, but it wouldn't be dismissed. Would have been from me dismissed a few years ago, but these days, probably one of the first phone calls I'll be making is, okay, tell me about the product stack, what's happening, what's on the roadmap, what have you got coming up, what about this, what about other customers like this, what should we do first? It's a sensible space to have.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think you're right. Now this kind of customer success role exists that didn't exist 10 years ago, for sure. Then there's much more interest, and there's also a metric that I might have talked about once or twice on here before, that I remember all vendors are measured by, which is NDR, net dollar retention, and which is really cool. and churn as well. So how much you spend more with a vendor every year and how little you spend less as well. Two really important metrics. So they're really engaged, the right ones are really engaged in helping you meet their two important metrics, really. So yeah. Okay, that's good. So so we've talked about why, we've talked about the different types of of organizations out there. Is there anything to look out for? Do you think don't do this, don't do that? And I think for me, the first thing would be is get clear on what you're asking and what you're expecting. So before you go out, ideally you want to get some clarity on what you're trying to achieve, so that you know that you're looking for the right consultancy, let's say, who can deliver something, or whether it's talking to a vendor or whoever it is. You've got to be very clear on what you're trying to achieve. And then when you're going to have that conversation with external parties, you need to be very clear that they have got experience in that space delivering the outcomes that you want, and have been there before and done that before. I think, because he could easily get quite wishy-washy, I think, without clarity, and therefore not get the results you want. What would you say?
Definitely that getting ducks in a row to begin with, for sure. In that beginning bit as well, treat it as if it's any normal tender activity. Get a few conversations going, compare, rather than just going with the one, even if that one's recommending and it's a great one for whatever reason, existing relationship, friend of a friend, whatever it is. Still compare. Ultimately, it might be a piece of work at the beginning or at the back end, but it's going to be some money to be spent. So go compare is a front piece. But then the bit to avoid the wishy-washy bit, irrespective if it's a strategic piece of activity or if it's a delivery, work at the actual measurement side of things. What are the KPIs? What is the need all going to look like from having this relationship? Yes, we know about the business case activity and you have to justify the spend to the financial director, and then that just disappears. No one rarely, I haven't been involved necessarily, is the tracking of that on a long-term basis, certainly back in the larger consulting days. Like that, if you can get the measurement piece agreed, so you know what day one looks like versus day 25. I'm not talking about the outputs and the line items and the statements of work and all that kind of jazz. Now, actual metrics. Are you bringing costs down? Are you increasing productivity? Are you saving time? Are you X, Y, Z, whatever it is? Put the numbers in and make it transparent for both parties to track. Keeps everybody honest.
Yeah, I totally agree. Good. All right. Well, that was a pretty good session, although I feel like I talked for most of it today, Matt. Apologies. So we were talking about when you should bring outside help in and why, and we've kind of found kind of four things, or 4 times you should do it. Number one, if you need cost savings, you should definitely bring in outside help from that. Number 2, if you're not sure what to do next, it's a great time to bring in somebody else. Number 3, when you need additional operational help to get it done, but that should be a different party to somebody who you're asking for what to do next. And number 4 is that actually a lot of people are stuck in a rut and don't know it, because they've operated that way for many years and could be doing so much better. We then talked about the sorts of places you could go for help when you know you want to do something different. Number 1 is go if you can, get your people out to user groups to talk to other users of these products and see what you can learn from them about what they're doing better than you are. Number 2 is talk to your vendors They are incented to make sure that you get the most out of the platform, and can tell you about what their other clients are doing to be successful with it. Number 3 was using a big consultancy firm, which I know a lot of large enterprises do that. The risk typically is that you end up with a proposal from a big consultancy to do that, to do the work out the back of it. And then number 4, which I think was our sort of, which is the ideal place to go, is using a niche or boutique consultancy that have probably been in the space for years and years. They've worked on both sides of the fence, and they know their stuff. And then finally, the most important thing was get clarity on what you're going out to market for. Talk to a few different consultancies or whatever, and make sure that you are both very clear about what the outcomes, the measurements, KPIs are going to be for any deliverables. Wonderful. Thank you very much, Matt. That was a good session. To all of our listeners, thank you very much for watching and listening. If you agree, disagree, drop us a line, drop something in the comments. If there's a topic you would like us to cover, then please let us know, and we will be more than happy to cover it.
On that note, so we pulled our finger out. We do have 3 lives in the works without us. So we have 1 coming up very soon. I think by the time this video goes out, I would have sent the post out as well. So Alex Kixby, who's an interim CIO or an on-demand CIO, he's going to be coming in and doing a session with us on Friday, the 19th of July. So the invite will go out that very soon. That'll be on the main page within LinkedIn. And then we have 2 more sessions lined up. I don't say the names just yet because we need to confirm. But we've got an asset discovery specialist coming up. So probably easily the best I've worked with in the world. Any form of asset discovery, including service modeling as well. That's going to be coming in. And then the other one is the other end of that data. One of the best SACM people I've worked with in the world, definitely, who's a specialist at consuming that from a strategic point of view. So we've got the asset discovery piece taking place, and the person who would actually put to work that data in the business as well, understands it at a very low level. Those will happen probably in sequence. So it could be July, August, September. We're not sure yet, or it could be a couple in 1 month. Not sure. We'll get the dates for those other 2 in the coming weeks. But certainly for now, we've got the session with Alex, which is going to be Friday the 19th. And it's going to be a Q&A format for what a CIO thinks or feels tooling does for an organisation.
Superb. Wonderful. We look forward to seeing you all there. Thanks for watching and listening, everyone. We'll see you soon.